I used to have all my characters unlocked. I finally got my Twitch set up. Yay. So, here I am streaming on YouTube, giving you guys a flank tier list. So, first off, if you want to rank all of the classes in Paladins right now, the two strongest classes are obviously going to be tanks and damages. Because tanks just control the game right now. Between the point pressure that Inara and Barrack provide, between the damage potential of Makoa, Term, Nendo, Khan, Ashe has a bit of a backline bully where they can all hybrid between main and off tank. Atlas is another solid option that I think a lot of people on console forget about, but is still really strong on PC. Torv is pretty much the weak one because of the nerf that he received. He's not really that viable, except as kind of like a second tank support hybrid. Ruckus is just a damage tank. He can't really hold point that well, so he struggles a lot of times unless you're going for a really aggressive, almost a dive comp like an Overwatch comp. You got Rom. Rom's a great bully tank, which a lot of people still haven't figured out how to either play or go up against. But all in all, your tanks are your strong ones. Tanks can carry games. And for damages, damages are up here just because of how powerful they are. Tyra, Victor, Vivian, some combination of them is usually banned in all of the ranked games that I go up against. With people like Leon and Cassie, who still have insane burst damage, being really strong, especially for PC. And then you have your sleeper picks like Strix and Drogos, who are sneaky, where they're always good, strong picks. So those are your clear 1 and 2 class choices. And then you have your supports. Well, supports are all over the place. Because you have people like Grok, who's viewed as just a damage, even though he has insane healing. You have Pip, who's viewed as just a damage, even though he can do good healing. You have people who are main heals, like Ying, Furia, and Damba, almost being treated like off healers. Like they don't exist. Like it's Genos or Bust nowadays, and Saris if you don't know how to heal. Like, Saris is the one most people pick if you just don't understand how to heal. But flank is really the worst category right now. Flank is the most outdated. And the funny part is, so if you want to say flank is like the most outdated category, two of the most annoying characters are here in the likes of Evie because of her constant mobility, and Maeve because of her sheer annoyance factor. You have two of the most banned characters in Talis and Skye. They're easily two of the most bannable characters. And then you have Koga, which everyone forgets as being arguably the most broken character in the game. So, how can I say that flank is the worst class? Well, here's the big issue right now. So, 2 tank is the meta. 2 tank counters any flank. Any tank can 1v1 a flank, with the exception of Skye and Talis. That's the problem with the flanks right now. Skye and Talis are the only 2 flanks in the game that can fight tanks effectively. Now, one can make an argument for Mochi. Mochi lacks range. Like, seriously lacks range. Compared to a Skye or a Talis. Maeve, you could say as well, because of street justice. She can just eliminate tanks straight up. Maeve lacks sustain, and she's just as vulnerable as someone like Evie. And another thing that confuses a lot of people, if flanks hit for such high damage per shot, or have such sustained continuous fire, why are they so bad against tanks? Well, let's look at tanks. Inara cannot be beaten. And this is the thing we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the clear number 1 and number 2 being Talis, Skye. I'm going to question that. Talis and Skye, they're going to be 1 and 2. But the order we're going to put them in is odd. So here's the thing. So looking against the tanks. So how do tanks counter them? Well, Atlas's wall counters pretty much anything you want to throw at them. I mean, the only flank that can counter Atlas would be Evie, because she can blink through his shield, kill him, and then either fly or blink back. But other than that, Eevee gets cut out by most of the other tanks. People like Barrack, they can deal enough chip damage between turrets and have a decent enough heal where it doesn't matter what you do. Makoa's hook with Pluck can basically two-shot an Eevee if he can catch her in between blinks or ice blocks and something like that. Torv's Nullify can knock her out of whatever she wants to do except for ice block. Terminus can just res and force her to either run away or ice block. Nendo can counter her ult with his ult. Khan with Vortex Grab. I mean, Ashe can use knockback to her advantage to keep Eevee at range. Ruckus doesn't really have a defense, but that, again, we're not really talking about Ruckus. Rom doesn't give a shit because he has too much health. Anara, she's got cripples. You know, that's an example for most cases why Eevee and Maeve don't work. For people like Mochi, Koga, anyone that outranges. So, like, Mochi does very good against Terminus. That's, like, the best matchup you can get is against Terminus. Ruckus outranges you. Ashe can outrange you. It depends on, you know, how aggressive you're being. Anara outranges you. Khan outranges you. Atlas outranges you. Barrack outranges you. Makoa outranges you. The only people you can't outrange are Fernando and Term. And Fernando counters Mochi. Because Fernando has about the same mobility that Mochi does, but he has a shield. And he has an ult that protects him from Mochi. Whereas Terminus is really weak because he doesn't have any real way to deal with Mochi. If you look at Koga, Koga can pretty much handle himself against any of the tanks. He can handle himself against Rom, Inara. The real problem with Koga comes from what tanks can't he deal with. So, for example, Terminus can win a range fight by keeping his Siphon up and forcing Koga to get in close. But Koga can just avoid Terminus and be fine, go after everyone else and leave Terminus on his own. He can obviously kill Torv, he can obviously kill Barrack, Makoa. I mean, he can dash around pretty much most of the bigger abilities. Some characters can give him a challenge, like Anara. If Anara runs Cripple, it forces him to play around his agility more. And if you don't have the right build for that, I mean, that's the issue. I mean, Khan is another character that, with Vortex Grab and the shield, he can force a good Koga to buy Wrecker if you want to do that. But at the end of the day, you're forcing a character to buy an item, and once he buys that item, I mean, it's game over for Koga. For a lot of the flanks people consider lesser right now, like Xin, Lex, Buck, Andrew, they all have decent amounts of range poke. Andrew's real problem is he lacks versatility. He's pretty much, you have to use the dash for either getting in or getting out. He has a low-key punch that most people don't build around anymore, unless you're a one-trick Defiant fast. You have Cursed Revolver for more consistent damage. You have Godslayer for bigger burst damage. You know, you've got Buck, heavily countered by Cauterize, and most tanks are going to run that anyways. Lex can be a tank killer with Death Hastens, but on the other two talents, he can't. And Xin is a tank's worst nightmare with Guillotine, but he lacks a lot of sustain and a lot of damage. He's pretty much relying on the constant ulting tanks to kill them situation. Khan's Vortex Grab can pretty much demolish anything a flank has to offer. Same with Warder's Field for Anara. Anything that, like, stuns or cripples for an extended period of time kills flanks, because it forces most flanks to burn a movement ability. So, let's start at the top. So, the top flank on the game right now is Talis. And looking at his kit, it's not hard to see why. He has a Tyra ult every 10 seconds, and if you run Inner Strength, where your teleport resets the cooldown of it, it's insane how often you can have your overcharge. You can overcharge, teleport, overcharge again. And basically, you have a guaranteed amount of damage to just fuck people up with. And that hail of bullets is insane. Looking at loadout cards, one of the reasons why he's so strong, he has a lot of really good cards at his disposal. So he has decent movement speed cards in his kit. He has some DR cards in his kit. He has a fuck ton of lifesteal in his kit. He has some good sustain. Nothing really jumps off the charts as being overpowering, other than his numbers. Like, he doesn't have anything that really changes how he plays. Mostly you're either buffing movement speed, damage reduction, life steal, or in-kit sustain. You know, if you're looking at builds like this is an in-build sustain. This is movement speed. This is reload speed. This is life rip and DR. This is the meme build, as I call it, the modern abuse. This is ult charge if I kill with my punch and increase the duration of overcharge by an extra second. So I have 4-second unlimited ammos. I mean, what Talis provides is just so much damage. And his ult is really good because it enables him to quickly get in or out of fights by burning his ult. So, like, if you need somebody to contest point for a few seconds, Talis can do that. Talis is probably the best flank in the game. For being one of the low health flanks, being in the category of, like, Skye, Eevee, Koga, and Maeve as being the bottom health type flanks, he has the best sustain options to him because you can build around life rep, you can build around teleport healing, you can build around just like kill to heal type stuff. You can build around a lot with Talis. And because of how much damage he puts out, it makes him pretty much a no-brainer. Skye is the next highest. Skye's the number 2. She's countered by one thing, and that's Illuminate. If you don't buy Illuminate, you can't beat a Skye. And the key to mention with Skye is just what she does. So, Skye deals damage. Skye deals massive burst damage with poison bolts and debilitate. Her builds aren't great. There's a few things, like she can have an unlimited ammo card that gets reset by hitting a poison bolt. She has bonus movement speed after elims, which can make her impossible to catch. Other than that, she doesn't really have a lot of, like, great overpowered cards. What she does is she burns through tanks, and considering, like, double tank is a hugely popular thing, and double heal is starting to become more popular with 1 tank, 2 heals, she just counters that. Her ult is a massive fuck you to any shield in the game. It deals a lot of big burst damage. It's easy to avoid. The problem with Skye is she's countered by Illuminate, so people think she's shit. But the amount of damage she puts out makes her ban-worthy. So, there's your clear 1-2. And third is gonna be Koga. Koga's still broken off his energy. Basically, there's 3 different builds for him. So you have Constant Dash, Koga, which never dies. Because you always have your dashes up, you always heal and reload off your dashes. You have I Never Run Out of Bullets, Koga, which has constant ammo regen off of whatever they do, and them shooting their bullets gives them their abilities, which give them more ammo. You have I Am the Claw Master, I am fake Wolverine that slashes and dashes everyone to death with claws and never has to come out. And then you have Constant Agility Koga that's just running around SMGing everything to death. And there's no counterplay to Adrenaline Junkie. That's the problem that I have with it. There is no counterplay for Adrenaline Junkie. Literally, you gain 1 energy for every 70 damage done with your guns, okay? To put that in perspective, you gain 1 energy for every 2 bullets you shoot and hit. I mean, Blood Reaper is not great of a card. It deals good. It's a great way to kill tanks, but it's worse than Skye. Skye's better. And Dragon Fangs gives you a bit more range. I think the thing that a lot of people don't understand with Koga is just how to kill him. And because he's broken, if you know how to play him, he is that 3rd spot. In 4th is gonna have to be Eevee. Eevee's the best pure flank in the game. She has 2 separate movement abilities on relatively low cooldowns, 4 and 10 seconds. She has the ability with Wormhole to get a 2nd dash. And I'm gonna call it a dash. I'm not gonna call it a blink, I'm gonna call it a dash. That's what it is. She has Ice Block that makes her immune to everything. She's one of 2 characters in the game that has an immune to everything ability. And I'm gonna say 2, because she's not effective. She can cancel out of anything into it, pretty much. So, I think the downside to Eevee is her aiming requirement and her mobility. Loadout card-wise, you're going to see mostly the same cards in an Eevee deck. That kind of limits her viability. She has a high skill gap, but you don't see her played a lot. The next highest flank still has a soft spot in my heart is Xin. I think Xin truly is one of the best flanks in the game because he has situations for everything. You don't have a healer, you run Smolder, and you go for constant reset on health. You know, you're going up against a lot of tanks, you run Guillotine, you kill whatever tank you hit. You run Yomi, now you're a damage dealer. He has so many get-out-of-jail-free options, and he does have a decent amount of cards. He has some DR, he has some life rep, he has some movement speed, he has ammo regen, health regen, cooldown reduction. He's got a lot of versatile cards. I think the issue with Xin is that if you don't run Smolder, you don't have a consistent way to heal yourself. If you don't run Guillotine, your ult is pretty much useless. And if you don't run Yomi, you lack long-range damage that you need to win poke fights. And that makes him very hard to go up against because... Or very hard to play because he has an option to deal with everything, but if you don't pick the right thing, you're not going to win the game because of it. So, the 6th flank that we have is unfortunately Maeve. I say unfortunately because I still think she's one of the weaker flanks in the game. I still think that Maeve just simply does not offer enough. She has 1 damage ability, and that is her daggers. And she has 2 movement abilities. I don't count the 400 damage from Pounce. She has 2 movement abilities, and that's it. You have Street Justice, which gives her an execution. I don't think it should be 35%. I think it should be 25%. You have Rogue's Gambit, which basically just turns your dash, your Pounce dash, into a movement ability instead of a damage ability. And you have Cat Burglar, which is like Rogue's Gambit, but for your Prowl. Her ult is weak and easily countered. But the sheer amount of annoyance that she has, I mean, she has a fuck ton of DR, movement speed, and health regen in her kit. And it makes her a nightmare to go up against. And because she gets the bunny hop, she has the 2nd most mobility in the game behind Eevee. Now, the difference between her and Eevee is Eevee has effective crowd control. And Eevee has a lot higher burst damage. Wait a minute, they both have the same rate of fire, and Maeve deals 50 less damage. But she has Cat Burglar, which she can get at easier than Eevee. Well, Eevee has Over the Moon. I still think Over the Moon is her best. And she still has just more consistent damage output than Maeve does. Maeve falls into 2 categories. Maeve is either a tank killer with Street Justice, or she's just a bunny-hopping Fortnite bitch with the other 2. So for the last characters, the last 4, I have Andro next. Andro is in a really bad state right now because he does not have the tools he needs. So the nerf to Punch and Defiant Fist makes his Punch pretty much ineffective. The only time you really see the Punch is if you're going for a specific build that is set around either getting a reload when you hit someone with Punch, so that you can just fire your gun a few more times instead of having to reload, or if you're trying to get an ult charge or kills off of it. Like, if you need a heal or ult charge, and you want to try and go around that, you get the Defiance build, where you just punch people to death with that. That can work. The problem with his Punch is because it's so undervalued right now, it means the rest of his kit has to be taken into account. Now you have the reversal spam with Godslayer, which is probably it's his biggest damage ability, because it means you can confirm more damage more quickly, and you can reset it. Or you can go for Cursed Revolver, where your regular shots deal more damage at a slightly slower rate of fire. And one would say, well, I see a lot of people run Cursed Revolver, because as long as you can hit your shot, that's better damage, but it's not really that big of a damage boost. The next best flank in the game is going to have to be Lex. He's 3rd from the bottom. Lex is in an awkward spot. He does not have the mobility that any of the other flanks have. Any of the other flanks have the ability to get out of trouble if they need to. Lex is one of the 3 worst movement abilities, and that's really the thing. When you look at the characters with movement abilities, the 3 worst are at the bottom. Okay, that's why Lex is here. The issue with Lex is... So he really only has... He has 3 builds, but they're not really great. So you have Heroism. This is the slide spam. Okay, this is... I want to slide around everywhere, have a fuck ton of damage reduction, and CC immunity. And it gives him some survivability against tanks and big budget abilities. But that highlights the weaknesses of his damage. He has 320 damage a shot. He gets 4 shots a second, so he's looking at 1280 DPS per second. But that's not great compared to some of the other flanks in the game. And they have damage fall off and recoil. You have his auto aim on a lengthy cooldown. And that's it. You just have those two abilities. And if you can't hit those shots, you're fucked. Then you have Discovery, which makes you a great 1v1 target because it increases your damage against one person by 30%. And he has a bunch of good builds around getting health back and getting movement speed around that person. But because once you kill that person, it changes. It could be somebody that is nowhere near you. It makes the build very ineffective. You have a build that works 20% of the time. If you kill the Retribution target, great. And then you have to hope you get another Retribution target you can actually kill. If you get a tank, you're fucked. You can't do it. And then you have Death Hastens, which gives you tank power. So it reduces your ammo count down to 6 shots, but you get 680 damage a shot. You're looking at over $1,000 on headshots, pretty much. You're right at about 1,000 if you hit a headshot. But it has, like, no cards that work well with it. So it's not really that great. You either pick Heroism, or you pick a damage card. And if you pick a damage card, you either pick the tank killer, or you pick the squishy killer. Buck is next. Buck is second from the bottom. He has a solution for everything like Xin, but he does it worse than Xin. He has a way to heal himself without running a legendary card. But it also means he's always countered by Cauterize. He deals great damage per shot, especially if you run Ensnare. But the problem is you have to burn a potentially 10-second ability in order to get a chunk of damage against one person. And you have a movement ability that's not great, and people say, oh, you can run Bounce House, it guarantees some damage, blah, 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 it confirms. No, it's not. Bounce House is shit. I'm sorry. He has a lot of good cards at his advantage. He can make a lot of good builds. He can make movement speed builds, DR builds, increase healing builds, cooldown reduction builds. He has a lot going for him build-wise, but the problem is he gets countered by Cauterize. And that's the problem. He's like the hardest hit character for Cauterize. Because he relies on that self-heal in order to not die. That's part of his kit. He's slow, he's big, he deals a lot of damage at close range, and he needs that chunk heal in between fights in order to keep himself alive so he's not spamming need healing. And his ult's not that great. I mean, his ult basically turns him into a Talis overcharge. He gets clearly outmatched by the character. Last is Mochi. Mochi... People say Mochi's better now. She's a sneaky because she deals burst damage. I can't. Mochi is good at getting in your face, melting you in about 3 seconds, and then dying once her magic barrier is gone. She has magic barrier, which completely negates everything you're trying to do to her, and it can heal her. And she has her ult, which can completely evaporate a character from the game. If you eat the cookie. Those are the two things she has going for her. She has no good cards other than Boom Boom. Toot is shit. Because it heals allies. It doesn't heal you. Snack Attack is shit because you have to walk over the enemy to get the heal off it. Which can be a problem if you're killing someone at range. And like, if you get a kill with Boom Boom in the enemy's backline, you're not doing anything. And then you have Boom Boom, which gives her area of effect damage. She's a burst damage dealer right now, but her sustain isn't there. So, pretty much you're in order. You've got Talis is number 1. You have Skye at number 2. Koga, if you know how to play him, at number 3. Which, anyone can play Koga. It's Koga. Eevee comes in at number 4. Maeve comes in at number 5, begrudgingly, as much as I hate the character. Xin comes in at number 6. You have Androxus at number 7. Lex at number 8. Buck at number 9. And Mochi at number 10. There you go.